From the heartland of America, focused on God, family, and country, the mouthpiece of the Midwest, this is Dale Carter's America.
Well, we're back, and we're delayed this week because of the election, the primary election in both Missouri and Kansas. And obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on with the national scene as well. Dale Carter with Kurt Wheeler, and Kurt is going to tell you all the ways that you can be part of what we do on Dale Carter's America.
Hi, welcome back to all of the podcast watchers and podcast haters. We love every single one of you.
And listeners. Some people just do the audio.
That's true. And listeners. You can find us on YouTube or Rumble for the video version. We play lots of clips and show lots of things. So if you can, make sure that you're checking that out. And subscribe on YouTube and subscribe on Rumble. Leave a comment, drop a like. It really helps the algorithm and helps us out. You can find the audio-only podcast on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, that's what I was trying to say, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, and then follow us on Facebook as well for all the action.
Did you vote in the primary?
I did.
Good boy. I voted as well. So that's, I mean, because I tell people, you can't bitch if you don't vote, right? I mean, it comes down to that simple. If you don't vote, don't bitch. And if you vote, you have a voice in what's going on here. We wanted Bill Eigel to be the next governor of Missouri, and it's not going to happen. It was close.
Yeah.
Mike Kehoe, the lieutenant governor, is going to be the Republican nominee for governor of Missouri. Bill Eigel was close, and a distant third was Jay Ashcroft. There were a lot of other names on that primary as well. So now what we will hope, this is what we should do on a national level too. When all the fighting is over and the smoke is cleared, we need to coalesce behind our nominee. It's what I did for Donald Trump. And people who watch this podcast and listen to it know he was not my choice to run in 2024, but a vast majority of Republicans disagreed with me. And he won the primaries, he won the nomination, and he is our nominee. So we coalesce behind him because, as we're going to discuss on this podcast, it's not personalities, it's policy, it's issues that matter to voters. And in the state of Missouri, what matters is we're allegedly a red state. And we've got Iowa to our north and Arkansas to our south, where we've got real good conservative governors there that are running laps around the state of Missouri. But our choice in Missouri is it's Mike Kehoe or it's a liberal Democrat who's going to recast Missouri as St. Louis and Kansas City are. And we don't want that.
Yeah.
Right? So, Mike Kehoe is our guy, and we wish him the best, and we'll support him because he's right on most of the issues. Now, would I like somebody more conservative than Mike Parson? I would, and I've made that clear. I think Mike Parson's a great guy. We appreciate his service when he was a sheriff, but he's not as conservative as I'd like. I know he's not as conservative as you'd like because you're more conservative than I am. Not
Allegedly.
I mean, on some things you're more conservative than me, but we want him to be more conservative and start talking about things like school choice, because that's where Iowa and Arkansas are doing better than Missouri is right now. So there you go. Other things that came out of this: Cori Bush, who we've made fun of over in St. Louis, congressperson from the Squad, she was voted out.
Yep.
So, it's a Democrat who beat her in that primary. Remember, we had that video clip of her saying that it was a vast right-wing conspiracy that was coming at her? No, yeah. It wasn't. It was your stupidity and how you acted.
Constituents are all right-wing conspiracy theorists.
I'm sure now. That's what it must be. That's what
and
it must
racists,
be.
too. Don't forget that.
And, something that's unique in the state of Missouri is that the police department in Kansas City is run by the state of Missouri. You knew that, right?
Yeah.
It's the only city in the state of Missouri, maybe the only city in America, where the state basically stepped in and said, you're such a screw-up local government, we can't let you run this anymore. And so they run it. So there was a statewide vote on whether Kansas City would be required to spend 25% of its budget on policing, which, Mayor Q, the Pharaoh, he wanted to back out of all that, right? He was one of those defund the police kind of guys. Let's just all get along. And meanwhile, people are dying every day in black-on-black violence in his city. He doesn't seem to care. So the voters of Missouri, the grown-ups, told Kansas City, you have to spend 25% of your budget on the police department.
There you go.
That's probably a good thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Anything else jump out at you from the primary?
No, not really. I mean, obviously, the presidential ticket was not on the ballot because we have a caucus for that now, which, at this point, Trump's the nominee anyways, but that kind of sucks, not getting to vote for the presidential primary.
Right.
But other than that, not really.
Dr. Prasanth Reddy won the Republican nomination in the 3rd District of Kansas, and he will take on Sharice Davids. Now, is she in the squad?
I think she's sort of like an honorary member.
An honorary member of the squad.
Yeah.
So there you go. So good luck, Dr. Reddy. And former Kansas Attorney General Derek Schmidt, he jumped into a congressional primary as well in the 2nd in Kansas, and he's going to take on former Representative Nancy Boyda in November. So some interesting things that happen. A lot of folks ran unopposed. Our good pal Mark Alford ran unopposed.
Right.
So we'll see what happens down there in November. I mean, the 4th is pretty much a red district in Missouri, so I think he's going to be okay. Yeah, I didn't know anything about this guy.
I just think he has a cool name, Dr. Reddy.
He's Indian.
Yeah.
I saw him on an interview with Indian television. They think it's really cool that he's a doctor and running for Congress in the United States, military veteran and all that. So we wish him the best of luck because, again, it comes down to issues as we are going to get to. But first, before we do anything else on the podcast, we thank a couple of our sponsors first, and they kind of tie together. Bob Watson, he's been my State Farm agent for nearly 30 years, and I will share him with you because he's been steering people right on insurance for 50 years as a State Farm agent. He's at 7th and Main in Blue Springs. You can reach him at 816-229-7878. Auto, home, life. He can, if you can insure it, he can find a way to get it done. Health insurance, pet insurance, bundle your home and car insurance and save even more. And again, he's licensed in Missouri and Kansas, so he can take care of you anywhere in the Kansas City metro area. 816-229-7878. Call my friend Bob Watson and get insurance. You need it, right? If you're a bad driver like I am. I haven't had a wreck in a while. Almost had one yesterday. Bob probably just sprouted another gray hair. I almost had one yesterday. I was looking at somebody who was tailgating me, so I was like looking back, and then I looked forward, and the person in front of me had stopped.
Yeah.
I hate that.
Yeah.
So almost hit him.
But you didn't.
And if I had, I would have called Dale's Body Shop in Blue Springs. Dale Reynolds, he's a new sponsor on the podcast here, and he's been putting cars back together after you've wrecked them since 1987. It's a long time. They take care of their customers. They make them look just like new again. I mean, he's a great guy, and everybody in Eastern Jackson County knows him. If you get in a wreck and they say, where do you want to take the car? You take it to Dale's Body Shop.
This is it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dale's Auto Collision Repair Center. Okay. So that's all you need to know. They're on 40 Highway in Blue Springs. If you get in a wreck in Kansas City and the wrecker goes, where are we taking it? You take it to Dale's. It's that simple. 37 years servicing Kansas City. And another thing that we want to get out there, and we're going to do a segment from Dale's here coming up in the coming weeks. If you or somebody you know is a body shop person, right? If you've worked on cars, worked on bodies, and you want to get a new gig, you don't like how they're treating you where you are, Dale Reynolds is a prince of a man to work for. I've known him for a very long time. Go see him, and he'll put you to work. Because like a lot of employers, and we've talked about this on the podcast, Kurt, they can't find good people to work anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to work. What is the deal?
Yeah, I don't know. But this seems like a good place to work, so
Oh, yeah.
go do it.
Well, and if you could have seen some of my before and afters. I mean, I had that Chevy Impala. Did I know you when I had the Chevy Impala?
Yes.
Okay. I was meeting somebody for lunch in Independence at Smokehouse Barbecue. And as I got there, I was focused on something else. That's usually how these things happen. Was smelling the barbecue fumes. Couldn't wait to get there and have some barbecue. And I turned right too soon, and I went right over a curb. And it collapsed my front right tire into the body of the car. Do you know what that sounds like? I've
actually done exactly the same thing.
And I thought I was okay. I'm like, I'll just pull into the parking space here. We'll see what happens. And I turn to the right, and it's like, Rawr!
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
towed
I
it.
did the same exact thing going like 5 miles per hour in a 7-Eleven parking lot in Centerville, Virginia. So
Dale
there you
Reynolds has seen everything.
Yeah.
And he'll fix you. He'll get you right back to new. All right. So from my vacation, we were out in Montana. My wife is still there as we're recording the podcast. She loves to spend a couple of weeks out there. I can only do 1 week. I mean, I don't know how you are on vacation, but when I get to Thursday of my vacation week, I'm ready to go home.
Yeah. 1 week is a good amount of time.
Yeah. I start thinking, I want to sleep in my own bed. Then I start thinking about the show, my morning show, and I start thinking about the podcast and things we want to talk about, and I want to get home. So we were in Montana for this part of the vacation. And this is my second trip to Montana. What an interesting state. There are only 1.4 million people who live there in that entire state.
Oh, wow.
Were you aware of that?
I knew it was a small population, but yeah.
Do you know what the population of the Kansas City metro is?
It's like 3 million.
It's less than that.
Yeah.
But more people live in the Kansas City metro than live in the entire state of Montana.
And I'm sure the people of Montana would like to keep it that way.
They really would. And the problem they're facing right now, frankly, is people moving in from California.
Yeah.
Who want to Californicate Montana.
Right.
And the locals there don't like that at all. The big Senate race going on there, as you're kind of going through my vacation reel, that was at the top of the Going to the Sun Road.
Yeah.
Which is a literal term. I mean, you're driving almost straight up. It's crazy. And then that picture was taken there too. Yeah, I got some personal pictures in there, but the moose pictures and all kinds of fun stuff. Yep. Out on the rapids or whatever.
That's a good one.
You like that picture?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm going to put that one on canvas.
Yeah.
Just because it's got all the different colors. I mean, every picture I took just from my phone. I mean, it's like everyone's a Bob Ross picture.
Yeah.
You know who Bob Ross was?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. I was a big fan of Bob Ross. And so when I frame these pictures like the one that you're showing right now, I like to have like a tree on the left that's really close to me.
Right.
And then you see the depth of the picture. I mean, I put some thought into
That's pro level stuff right there, Dale.
I put some thought into this
Yeah,
kind
absolutely.
of stuff. So the big Senate race that's going on in Montana is Tester versus Sheehy. Tester is a first-term Democrat in Montana. Now, Montana is a red state. Make no mistake about that. It is a bright red state. And Tester's this guy, he's got a buzz cut. He's a bigger guy. He's a Western kind of a guy. And he sold himself to the population of Montana, Kurt, as, you know what? I'm a moderate Democrat. And we know what that animal looks like, right? Because we lived, that's the guy. We lived through Claire McCaskill in Missouri. And, Claire was just good old Claire. I'm a moderate. She was on my show on KFKF several times. She's from Kansas City. And she gets to the Senate, and she's right there with Bernie Sanders and Kamala Harris and all the lefties in the Senate. John Tester's the same way. He's voted with President Biden 98% of the time. You tell me that's a moderate Democrat.
Yeah. Doesn't sound like it. But, they do this thing. I'll bring this picture back up because it's all about messaging and perception, right? So he's got the Carhartt jacket, he's got the crew cut, he's got the denim button-up shirt, he's got the pickup truck in the background. He's
a Montana guy, and they're making fun of Sheehy, saying that he's a carpetbagger and he doesn't even know how to cut wood. I saw one meme on him where he's got like a piece of wood stuck on a axe or something. Doesn't know how to cut wood, and so they're trying to position him as the outsider, the Republican elite who wants to sell off parts of Montana and bring in more people from California, and that's how they're trying to couch him. And Tester comes off as this, I'm just a moderate. I'm just like Claire McCaskill. So chances are Sheehy is going to win that election because I don't think people in Montana are stupid, and they've seen 6 years of what John Tester has done as far as a voting record. He sold himself one way and he did something else. So my guess is that Sheehy is going to win that election, and then Tester's probably going to go over to MSNBC. I'm sure they'll put him right to work.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah, there's polls from 538, conglomerate of polls here that pretty much all have Sheehy up. July 1st, Sheehy +5, June 26th, Sheehy +6, June 13th even, June 5th even, March 29th Sheehy +3.
And I got to tell you can't swing a dead cat in Montana on the radio without hearing a commercial for either one of them.
I'm sure.
And there's signs up everywhere where there's any kind of population. And then there are areas where you drive and it's like Seek and Scan goes and you can't get any radio station. You know what station I listen to? Because we were supposed to have satellite radio in the rental, and when we got the vehicle, they said, "I'm sorry, we don't have satellite radio in this one, but it does have Bluetooth." So we brought up KFKF.
Nice.
So we're driving through Montana, man. We're listening to KFKF. It was really interesting.
Nice.
Yeah. One of the things that you've heard about the wildfires that they've had out west. Mm-hmm. A lot of smoke. And, you're getting the lefties out there saying, global warming, climate change. No, it's really not that. It's careless idiots who, throw a match somewhere, lightning strike sometimes, combined with bad forestry. Oh, and by the way, as you pull up Montana, you just can't unsee this once you see it. The state of Montana, the western side of it, looks like Joe Biden sniffing somebody.
Yeah. Let me pull up the memes. Hold on. Keep
there.
talking.
Yeah. So, so is the planet changing? When I hear from people on this, they go, "Oh, you're a flat earther." You've heard that before, right? You're a knuckle drag. You're a flat earther. No, I know that the earth is round. And I also know that the earth is 5 billion years old. 5 billion years. You can't even conceive of that. And it's constantly changing. It's constantly in a state of flux, right?
Yep.
Yeah. There's no better example than Glacier National Park, where we went in Montana. That's up near the Canadian border. And the areas that they call glaciers are shrinking, right? They're shrinking because the planet is changing. Is the planet warming? You bet your ass the planet. Oh, here we go. Here comes the meme. Joe is going to fit right into That's hysterical.
Come on, man.
But once you see it, you cannot unsee it, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And my friend Steve, who has a cabin we stayed at for 3 days while we were out there, he got countertops, nice granite countertops. And as a nice little bonus, in the same stone that they did, they gave him a piece for his dining room table that's shaped like Montana.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, oh, you get Joey's nose all the time. He goes, stop it. I don't even want to hear that anymore.
Yeah, they probably don't like hearing that very much.
Yeah. So who's crazy in all of this? I think it's crazier to think that you can make any policy change that's going to hold our temperature right where it is. The Goldilocks thing. It's always going to be 72 during the day, 65 at night, just the right amount of rain. Who's crazy? You can't stop what's happening. It's happening. And we will either adapt or we won't be here. And, flat earthers. I know the earth is round. And I know on the other side of the earth, there are countries like India, China, and Russia who aren't doing anything for the environment. At least we're doing something for the environment. And I think we ought to do reasonable things for the environment. Should we wreck our economy for the environment? I don't think we should.
Well, China and India are also building new coal plants, constantly. They have a whole new initiative. China in particular is building lots of coal plants. So
Germany,
and they're throwing their trash in the river, in the ocean. You look at where the ocean trash comes from. It's a very disproportionately China and India. I'll see if I can find that.
Well, that's the thing. We can't control what they do. So the liberals would say, well, we have to do something. That's where bad laws always come from, by the way. We have to do something. I saw this morning on the news that Maryland has passed an assault rifle ban. I wonder what that'll do to the murder rate in Baltimore. Do you feel like that'll change the murder rate by even 1 in Baltimore?
No.
Probably not. But they had to do something, Kurt. They had to, because, people are killing each other. Yeah. Well, put their asses in jail. We can stop this in 1 generation, and I've told you how.
Here's that graphic on the ocean pollution, by the way. Highest ocean plastic waste polluters. Number 1 is actually the Philippines. Annual estimation in metric tons, 356,371 metric tons of ocean waste comes from the Philippines. India, Brazil, China, Thailand, Myanmar, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and rest of the world comes in. So I guess we're in the rest of the world category.
Yeah. Well, again, the rock has been here for 5 billion years. We haven't been here for very much of that history at all, and we will either adapt or Earth will move on without us. That's the way these things happen. And for you to say, well, we're going to do this. We're going to have the Green New Deal, which Kamala Harris is all in on. It's just wrong. You'll just wreck our economy even further than it is. And when we get into the segment on her, you're going to find out exactly where we are right now and why we need to stop the silly talk that's going on out there and focus on what really matters. Because if we don't, it's not going to matter. It won't matter a lick. So there you go. One of the things that's out there now that I wanted to mention with Royal Roofing and Solar, did you see that Evergy is going for a 13.4% rate increase in January? It's not bad enough right now. You need to make it worse for us, Evergy? I mean, I get that shit rolls downhill, and, because of a lot of the policies coming out of Washington, energy is tougher to manufacture. But you're going to stick it to the local consumers. There's a way around that. I'm telling you, if you were on the fence about this, call my friend Mike Dale at Royal Roofing and Solar. He's at 816-540-7057. A lot of customers of Royal Roofing and Solar are getting credit bills back from Evergy because they are producing their own energy with their home. Think about that for a second, all right? When the sun's up, if you've got the right angle in the house and all that, you can produce energy with your house. Renewable energy, too. It's a great deal. And when you get that first bill from Evergy, that is a credit, not a bill, you're going to thank me for giving you this number, 816-540-7057. Royal Roofing and Solar, they did the roof on my house. Now, I don't plan to live there very much longer. There's kind of an equation you have to go through to see if you can recoup the costs of the solar panels versus the savings that you'll have on the energy bill. Mike Dale can walk you through that. If you're in your forever home and going to be there for a while, this is a great deal. A couple of websites, solarbyroyal.com and royalcontractingkc.com. And when you reach out to them, at least get that conversation going and see what they can do for you. Otherwise, you're going to have $500-600 a month electric bills, and that is going to add up over time. Make sure you tell them you heard about them right here on Dale Carter's America, the podcast. Here's another fact of life. 10,000 people a day turn 65 in the United States, and that's kind of like the checkered flag. Everybody's like, I'm in my job until I qualify for Medicare. Well, if you're approaching 65, reach out to Kirk Doris and Lori Hocker at Medicare Simplified KC, and they'll take you through the traps, because Medicare is definitely not one size fits all. You've got options and choices to make. Kirk and Lori can help you navigate the Medicare maze. So schedule the visit, or they'll come see you. Either way, 816-701-6661. As they say, get the answers and know your options. They're on the web at MedicareSimplifiedKC.com. Their office is in Independence, Missouri at 3600 South Nolan Road. That doesn't really matter if you're going to have them come to you. Either way, get that conversation started at 816-701-6661. All right. So, not that we shook on it or really had a bet, but I do not owe you $100.
Correct.
Right? That was the bet, right? Anybody other than Kamala, I owed you $100?
Well, I don't think we ever actually made a bet or anything like that, but
yeah,
you seemed less convinced that it was going to be Kamala. So
okay, so now there's new excitement for the Democrats. She's closed the gap, depending on which poll you look at. And in a couple of polls, I saw that she had a slight lead over Donald Trump. Will it last? She made her VP pick yesterday. You sent me his picture and said, who the hell is this?
Yeah.
Tim Walz. He's the governor of Minnesota. Gosh, a lot of people on the Republican side are breathing a sigh of relief right now because she had Josh Shapiro that she could have picked. I watched him yesterday in the buildup because he got snubbed for the VP. All things being equal, he probably should have been her pick. She needs Pennsylvania to win. Josh Shapiro is young. He's vibrant, well-spoken. He's a moderate Democrat. a true moderate Democrat. And I heard a couple of things. One, he's Jewish, right? And so that all of a sudden puts a red light on the fact that Democrats have been shitting all over Israel since October. There's no question about that. And that would put a bright light on that. The other bright light it shines is that he's young and vibrant and well-spoken. All things that Kamala Harris is not.
Right.
So, there was a fear that he would outshine her. Much like when Biden picked Kamala Harris. He didn't want anybody to outshine him. And she clearly fit that bill.
Well, I thought, she had a better chance of picking Shapiro just because he's from Pennsylvania.
Needs Pennsylvania.
Yeah, she needs Pennsylvania really badly. So,
do you know that Ronald Reagan, when he won in a landslide in 1984, the one state that he did not carry was Minnesota.
Right.
It's been bright blue liberal for as long as I can remember. And so she was going to get, Minnesota's a layup for her. She doesn't need him for Minnesota. I'm not sure what she needs him for. He's my age, but he looks about 15 years older than he is. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Look at him, look at me. Are you doing a side by side?
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah?
Move your head a little bit. Yeah, there we go.
How about that? Yeah, he looks a lot older than me.
He has less hair than you do.
See? I got the good hair gene going here. Plus, he's an old white guy, right? I thought the Democrats were all about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. And there's a lot more boxes to check before you come back around to old white guy.
Well, I think it just shows that the clear strategy from the Kamala campaign is to distance herself from her past progressive extreme policies and come more towards the middle and try and appeal to a broader coalition of Americans, because it's the only way that she's going to win. She can't win by running on the far left, stuff, which we'll talk about later because it's in her record. She's talked about it and she's
of course
supported it, but she's going to have to try and come across as more of a moderate.
Are you saying Walz is moderate?
No, I'm not. But I'm saying, he's a white guy. He's rural. He's from rural America. He's a veteran apparently. So, I don't know much about his policy positions. I'm sure he's
let me take you through one of them in particular. He was the governor of Minnesota when the George Floyd riots started. Remember the mostly peaceful riots,
right?
And he didn't do anything about it.
Right.
Those people had their cities burn, and he wouldn't send anybody in. He said, basically, what do you think you're getting with the National Guard? You think you're getting frontline troops? No, you're getting cooks and sweepers and all that. I'm not sending those people in. He's a guy who says socialism, he is a socialist. He says socialism in some ways is like, being a friendly neighbor. He says it's so benign like that. And we know that socialism isn't like a friendly neighbor. It's more like the neighbor comes into your house and steals your money. That's what socialism is. He's got a lot.
Here's the clip, by the way.
Okay.
But we can get out there, reach out, make the case. And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. But we can.
Don't you always think of socialism as being another person's friendly neighbor? I want my neighbor to come in and see if I've got any money stashed anywhere, because that's what the government does in socialism. They take from people who make the money and they give it to people who want to sit on their ass all day. And I think there ought to be a safety net. I've just said before, I don't think it ought to be a really cushy mattress. I think it ought to be a scratchy mattress that makes you want to get off your ass and get back out there. That's what I think you ought to do.
Right.
But that's not what Democrats do. And that's certainly not what left-wing Democrats do. And, I had a friend of mine who lives in Minnesota, and he said before anybody gets on their high horse and says from 1,000 miles away and says that this guy didn't do anything during the riots, first of all, they were peaceful protests until white people came in and stirred everything up. I'm not making that up. That's their narrative. They believe that. They believe that white supremacists went in there and stirred it all up, and that's what the problem was.
That's hilarious. That is very funny.
Yeah. So, so that's going to be your choice. There were other choices out there. We could have helped, right, with the whole DEI thing. There's a cabinet-level officer who would have been perfect. Pete Buttigieg, right? You could have checked a box. The first openly gay vice president of the United States. Wouldn't that have been it?
Yeah.
I mean, that would have checked a box. Of course, he's a lot younger and a lot more well-spoken than she is, right? He doesn't cackle. He doesn't really know what the hell he's doing. He's head of the transportation department after his run as mayor of South Bend, Indiana, which, trust me, is not a transportation hub of America. That was his only qualification, but he's gay. And so he checked the box. We talked about this before. They got the scoreboard in the basement at the White House, and they put together a checkerboard of it didn't matter what your qualifications were. It mattered more who you are and what you are. So Buttigieg is gay, and so he got to be transportation secretary. Why can't he be vice president? Why did you select an old white guy from Minnesota? There's others. There's Dr. Rachel Levine, the assistant secretary of health. There you go. Actually, you've knocked out both of them in the same picture because I was going to mention Sam Brenton, the former Energy Department crossdresser who stole women's clothes at airports. We did a story on him, remember?
It's just so crazy that this is real life,
These are people who could have been DEI picks for vice president, and the left would have stood on their feet and applauded. They've got no qualifications, but they check boxes. Do they have boxes? I don't know.
They should have picked Sam Brinton, let's be honest.
Yeah.
That would have been great.
It would have been. So there you go. Kamala Harris has not held a press conference as of this recording since the coup in the West Wing. The coup in the West Wing, which was worthy of House of Cards. There's no question about that. And, it's play number 4 from the Democrat playbook because there's nothing to see here, right? And the media won't even ask a question. And Kamala won't invite questions. I was watching J.D. Vance yesterday from Philadelphia. He had a rally in Philadelphia. Did you see any of that?
He's been doing lots of rallies. I haven't really watched them.
He is really well-spoken. And at the end of the rally, he took questions from reporters, probably a dozen, and he just fended them off left and right. And he finally said, you folks in the media back there, why don't you ask Kamala Harris a question?
You are fake news.
Why don't we ask her a question, right? Why don't you make her answer questions? They're not going to. And it's the liberal media. How tough would the questions be for Kamala? Remember when they asked Joe what his favorite flavor of ice cream is? That's probably what you'd get.
Corn Pop was a bad dude.
I'm going to miss all those drops from Joey B, and I've got hundreds of them.
Yeah, we're going to have to switch them over to Kamala Harris drops.
Well, we'll have to go back through all of her word salads because there's a lot to choose from there. So why, that's the question I have. And I put that on the podcast page on Facebook. And guess what? None of our keyboard warriors, the ones I'm talking about, who talk a big game, but when we ask them to come on the podcast, it's like, oh, no, I want to be paid, or you're going to edit me. Well, we don't edit. We don't pay either, by the way. Yeah, but you won't come here because you can't do it. You can't answer questions, just like Kamala Harris can't answer questions. And the media is not going to make her answer those questions. Isn't that sad?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to us, though. It's up to independent media to force these people to be held accountable for what they've said and what they've done. I mean, it's sad that it comes to that. It's sad that we can't trust the mainstream media to do what they're supposed to, but it's just the way that it is.
Long before you were even thought of by your father, there was this little thing called Watergate, right? Mm-hmm. And Woodward and Bernstein, at the Washington Post, they dug in on that story. There's a story here, right? The story is, did you know that Joe was in cognitive decline? Shouldn't this have been handled before the primaries even started? Why did you let him continue to slide while lying to the American people, saying that behind the scenes, man, he's got it. He's sharper than any of us in the room, right? You lied about that.
Obviously lied about it. And
then set up this coup. It's like we've gotten to the point where we're only, 60 days away from early voting in states. We have no other choice. It's got to be Kamala.
Right.
But Joe is sharp enough to still run the country until January 20th. I don't believe that either.
No.
And it worries me, Kurt, because, we had a situation where I guess Iranian militants have attacked us in Iraq, and they said Joe was going to the Situation Room. Really? I mean, do you trust Joe Biden in the Situation Room to make a life and death war decision at this point?
He's not doing anything. He's not in charge of anything. I don't even know. I mean, there's the videos that were coming out when he came back, from after making the announcement when he was sick with COVID, and then he came back and was on TV and everything like that. That was likely pre-recorded as well. But then there was other videos where he's like way taller now and just like weird stuff. So who knows what the heck is going on? But they certainly knew about it and hid it. And Kamala is certainly culpable for that. And I think honestly his wife is too. I mean, that just on a human level, to have your spouse know that you are in mental decline, that you need medical help, that you need to be, off somewhere where you can be taken care of and not in the public eye, and continue to push you out there like that is just terrible behavior.
Elder abuse
from a wife, specifically.
No question. I think she loved being first lady, right? She was on the cover of Vogue and all that.
Yeah.
So you had it up there a second ago, and I want to go there. Let's look at the Biden-Harris resume that I put up on Facebook. I've got a very liberal friend who used to work for me at KFKF who lives down in Florida, and he says, every point on this is wrong. Every point on it is wrong. So let's just...
It probably is wrong because it's probably more like 20 plus million illegals, not 15 million illegals.
Okay, so we can deal with some of these quickly here. They opened the door. Biden told them to come. They wore Biden-Harris shirts. She was responsible for the border, appointed that by the president, and didn't do anything. Historic inflation. As much as Joe wanted you to believe that he inherited 9% inflation, it was 1.4%. It is historic inflation, and even though the growth number is coming down, it's cumulative. The prices aren't coming down. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's cumulative. Okay. Record high gas prices in all 50 states. Yes. Record high consumer debt. Yes. Have you seen the credit card debt? It's astronomical. Release terrorists into the country. How could they have not with the open border? We don't know who these people are.
And there have been confirmed people that have been caught, from various bad groups.
The two wars, Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Hamas. Both of them tie back to Biden-Harris positions, right? The Ukraine-Russia war, our disastrous pullout from Afghanistan was the green light that Vladimir Putin needed to go into Ukraine, and our getting back in bed with the Iranians was the green light for them to funnel money to Hamas, who is their satellite, to attack Israel. And that's going to come back and bite us in the ass. We dealt with a disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. One of the worst days in American history was people clinging to the planes as they were leaving. Violent crime skyrocketing. You can't deny that. Tried to jail a political rival in the name of democracy. None of these cases against Trump would have been prosecuted if he weren't running for president. That tells you everything you need to know. We've dealt with, they lied to the public about Joe's decline. They had to know. They declared war on American energy. You're going to hear that in Kamala's own words coming up. Record low test scores for K through 12. I mean, ever since they put in a federal Department of Education, test scores have fallen. That is a documented fact, and it's gotten worse under Biden-Harris. And the most unpopular president and VP in history, every poll shows that. So what on that is wrong? You can't just giggle like Kamala and say, oh, that's funny, but every point in there is wrong. What's your counter-argument to that? Make a counter-argument. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, they just... say it's wrong and move on, I guess.
Yeah, well, we're going to say it's right, and we're going to move on. So where does she stand, and what will her program be? Because nobody in the media is going to ask her, right? She went on television yesterday with Walls, and did you see any of her speech? I had to turn it off about 10 minutes into it.
No.
Because in that 10 minutes, she promised everything. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And if I'm in the media, if I work at CBS or NBC or ABC, I'm going to, every statement she made, my question would be, how are you going to do that? And nobody's asking her any questions. She just gets to say whatever she wants. So we're going to go back to when she ran for president in 2020, right? She was the first one out, by the way. She got out before Iowa because she was polling so poorly, and somehow managed to become the VP pick. I think we've talked about how that happened. But what are some of her policy stance? Let's just, in her own words.
That's right. But they're not
now,
going to stop. They're not going to stop. And they're not, this is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not. And we should.
She's talking about the George Floyd riots there. Next, we have a clip of her saying that she's going to ban fracking, which is very short because she just says, I will ban fracking.
There's no question
And here's that.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that's going to go over really big in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, yeah. And, it's a short clip, but what more context do you need there? There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
How about defund the police? We got that?
Yep. This one is a little bit longer. There's a bunch of clips. I mean, you can find all these clips of her talking about this stuff. This was on some podcast or something like that. I don't know.
Look, part of this movement, and it's not just a moment, it's a movement, standing on the shoulders of the movements before. Part of this has to be about changing the system, rehauling the system.
She says a lot of words.
Ending the system. And so that piece of it, you're right. Under this Attorney General, I have no hope for it being implemented. But God willing, he will be out of that office shortly. And then we need to have a requirement that office do the right thing going forward.
So then if you're for overhauling, where do you stand on defund the police?
Look, right. So here's the thing. Defund the police. The issue behind it is that we need to reimagine how we are creating safety. And when you have many cities that have 1/3 of their entire city budget focused on policing, we know that is not the smart way and the best way or the right way to achieve safety. For too long, the status quo thinking has been you get more safety by putting more cops on the street. Well, that's wrong. Because, by the way, if you want to look at upper middle class suburban neighborhoods, they don't have that patrol car. They don't have those police walking those